Do you remember that feeling when there seem to be people around, correspondence, meetings, conversations, but you still find no one interesting? When you sit at a table in a cafe and inside, instead of dialogue, there is silence. Or after a long conversation with friends, instead of pleasure, fatigue, and emptiness come? Have you ever felt like the people around you are saying the same things they said yesterday, and tomorrow they will say the same things again, and it all seems equally tasteless to you? If you answer yes, you are not alone. This feeling is much more common than it seems, and there are reasons for it that are worth examining honestly and openly. One of the first facts to know is that the need for communication is as fundamental to humans as sleep or food. According to the World Health Organization, social isolation, or the lack of deep or supportive relationships, is a serious health threat that increases the risk of cardiovascular disease, depression, and anxiety. Communication affects our brains and bodies in the same way as other vital functions. Sounds strange, doesn't it? After all, we live in an age where communication has become easier than ever. Social networks, messengers, likes, and memes. But the paradox of our time is that the accessibility of communication does not equal the quality of communication. And this is one of the reasons why you may not be interested, even if you are surrounded by people. Remember that feeling when you scroll through your phone feed, see hundreds of faces, memes, comments, but in the end, nothing sticks? Studies show that passive consumption of social media content, when you just scroll, like, but don't really interact, increases feelings of social isolation and loneliness. People who spend more than 2 hours a day on social media are more likely to feel less connected to others in real life than those who use it moderately. And here it is important to understand, we can be socially active and yet emotionally isolated. When people say, "let's talk," it can be just an exchange of words, not real contact. Real contact is when feelings, interests, and attention are mutually involved. Research confirms that quality listening and attentive participation in conversation are the keys to real connection between people. People who feel that they are being listened to and heard are more likely to consider the interaction deep and meaningful. You may have noticed that talking to certain people feels easy and warm, but with others it feels like you're spinning your wheels, and sometimes with no one at all. Why is that? The answer lies in the nature of human communication. It turns out that the human brain has evolved for social connections. Social interactions stimulate areas of the brain associated with emotions, memory, and even feelings of happiness. Without such stimuli, the brain receives less social reward, and communication begins to seem cold or uninteresting. Now let's understand another important thing. The discounts we give ourselves in our heads often make us think that we are less interesting to people than we really are. In psychology, there is a concept called the liking gap. This means that people usually underestimate how much they like their conversation partner and how much their conversation partner values their company. We often think, "I'm boring," when in fact the other person may genuinely enjoy talking to us. We just don't know it. This is an important question. Ask yourself and answer honestly. How many people around you can you call true friends? Not just acquaintances or people you can have coffee with, but people with whom you can be yourself and ask for help in difficult times. We are often surrounded by many people, but we don't feel connected precisely because these relationships are superficial. They lack emotional exchange and mutual attention. It is very important to filter your environment. The quality of your environment directly affects your sense of satisfaction in social relationships and communication. On a psychological level, there is a difference between the desire to be alone and isolation imposed by circumstances or internal barriers. Some people enjoy solitude, and that's okay. But when someone becomes uninterested in most people, it may be related not only to personality, but also to the kind of communication experience we are used to. For example, if a person has repeatedly encountered misunderstanding, criticism, superficial conversations, or experiences where they were not truly listened to, Over time, the brain begins to save energy on interaction. It's as if it's saying, why invest if it doesn't work? And this is a completely natural defensive reaction of the body. After all, emotional resources are limited. Have you ever felt that you express yourself better when you are alone than when you are in company? This is also a common story. Studies show that individual preferences in social interactions vary, and some people really do enjoy solitary activities more. But it is important to distinguish between enjoying solitude and burning out from socializing. The former is calm and conscious, while the latter is emotional exhaustion. The question to ask yourself is, how much time do you spend alone, not because you want to, but because it's easier? Sometimes a preference for solitude masks a fear of being misunderstood, rejected, or judged. These fears arise from past experiences and can automatically influence how we perceive the people around us. Another phenomenon that is rarely discussed is social distance and its consequences. We live in a world where many people interact primarily through a screen rather than in person. Social distancing, even if it is psychological rather than physical, reduces the sense of belonging and can increase feelings of detachment from others. This affects the perception of communication, making it more superficial and less emotionally and meaningfully rich. Interestingly, even studies involving young people have shown that when we communicate in person, active listening and questions that reflect interest in the other person strengthen the feeling of connection and make the interaction more meaningful. But when the conversation happens on the fly, without attention to the emotional state of the other person, the comfort disappears, and the person begins to feel that no one is really interested. Perhaps the hardest moment for many is the realization that sometimes we ourselves block our interest in people because we have no inner connection with ourselves. When you don't know what you feel, what is important to you, what you want to talk about, your brain doesn't find meaning in dialogue. As a result, you may perceive everyone today as uninteresting, even though yesterday it was important for you to communicate. Another fact: people often think that interesting conversation partners must be all-around achievers in life, with ideas, stories, and charisma. But in reality, it's not just intelligence or wit that creates interest. Interest is created by sincere attention to another person, a willingness to listen, ask questions, and allow yourself to be vulnerable. And these skills can be developed rather than waiting for an interesting person to accidentally appear in your life. How many times during a conversation did you find yourself thinking about how you look, about what you're going to say next, instead of listening? How many times did your thoughts wander because you were preoccupied with unresolved issues? These subconscious moments also affect how you perceive other people. And here's what's important: if you often feel that no one is interesting, that's a signal. Not a signal that you are useless in terms of communication, but a signal that you need to reconnect with yourself, your emotional space, and your ability to feel, and then direct that feeling toward others. Perhaps your interest in people will return not when your social circle expands, but when your interactions become deeper. You don't have to love everyone, but you can learn to see not just words in people, but emotions, context, and stories. Because true presence doesn't begin with perfect words or the right reaction. It begins with inner silence, the moment you stop monitoring yourself and start feeling the other person. When the inner dialogue fades, a conversation stops being an exchange of lines and becomes an encounter. You hear the pauses. You notice the tone. You understand not only what a person is saying, but why they are saying it that way. And in that moment, people stop seeming boring. Because boredom is not the absence of depth in others. It is the absence of connection with yourself. By turning your attention inward, you restore your ability to see. And when you truly see, every person becomes a story, not a background. If you enjoyed this video, give it a like and subscribe to the channel.